smokes, I'm no joke out the bullpen. Bringing nothing but heat, leave you hanging like clothespins. He's a beast when he goes in, ice cold frozen. The first round draft pick, #1 chosen. Drop bombs, explosion, self-promotion. And I keep shit moving like a flanker in motion. I'm the #1 spokesman, it's my devotion. That I'm dedicated to the rhyme is my own notion. Brown water's the potion, it put hair on your chest. Or you can put one in the air and it'll put you to rest. Sweet dreams, I'm about to fade. I got my mind on my money and I'm dreaming about getting this all paid. Mr. Go-Getter, Mr. Assertive, Mr. Initiative, Mr. Results, man, I'm all about my business, kid. Damn.
Results and business on a Sunday not so casual Sunday morning in December. It is NFL Week 14, December 10th, 2023. Circa Millions, the show, the shark, the gun, the odds fellow, outside, ready to dominate. Live Shark Water Station X, coming over to YouTube. Join the chat. Let's fire it up. Guns Picks, what's going on, brother?
Man, oh man, it's good to be back in the sea and driving this baby all the way to the water. Listen, call me Mr. 17-4. I am on an absolute heater in the NFL. You need to be following this pitch. We are the sharpest content on the planet, and we're going to be running it back today with some heavy unit plays, at least from my end. And we got the odds fellow who ran the ship yesterday. Appreciate him, sir. What's going on, my friend? How you doing this fine morning?
Beautiful fall day. It's a little warm here, a little warm in the air. So we got football coming. I'm ready for it. I'm trying to give you guys a quick one. I might dip out, but these guys will carry the torch after I leave the stream. Great to see everybody. Comments flooding in already. Keep those picks coming. We want to see your questions, your picks, your best bets. We want to hear. We'll react to them during the show. Appreciate it, guys.
Absolutely. Not waiting around. First play, collaboration play. We're going down to New Orleans. Caesars Superdome, the gun opening the broadcast, the home team at -5.5.
Yeah, I think this is the time we need to buy the New Orleans Saints. I know it's dangerous. This team is not a good covering team, but when you look at New Orleans situationally, great spot for him here. New Orleans coming into this game on a 3-game losing streak, 2 on the road, 1 at home, 5-8 straight up, 2-9-1 ATS. Not the greatest ATS record on the planet. But you have Carolina coming off a loss. They're on a 5-game losing streak, losing by an average margin of 9 points per game, 1-10 straight up, 2-8-2 ATS this season. So New Orleans primarily, they've been great on the road, but bad at home with a -4 point differential, -13 net yard average, +1 turnover ratio, 2-3 straight up, 0-5 ATS at home this season. But out of those 3 losses, they dominated the yardage battle in those games. The only one they really didn't play well at home was Tampa. They played a bad game in that one in week 4. But the team in that sample size, we got Jacksonville, Detroit, and Tampa. I was like, so they played some really formidable teams at home. Now you got Carolina on the road. They are 1-5-1 ATS this season with a -10 point differential, -40 net yard average this season. So Carolina is in a rough spot from a situational standpoint. This is their 3rd straight road game and their 4th road game in the last 5 weeks, where New Orleans is on the 2nd leg of a 3 home game stretch. So you have a team that I think is in a better position rested wise than this Carolina team that is just packing their bags every single week. And when you look at these two teams, you go back to week 2, New Orleans did win the first matchup 20-17, but they had +102 net yards in that game on the road. Carolina was a 3-point dog in that situation. Carolina 3-0-1 and 3-1 straight up, all as a dog versus New Orleans. But the home team in this matchup is 4-2 straight up, 4-1-1 ATS. So for Carolina, the motivation I think is just completely gone. They fired their head coach. The nostalgia of having that assistant coach taking over with a motivational standpoint last week kind of felt like a win to Carolina. I don't think they're going to come into the situation highly motivated, where New Orleans, coming off that 3-game win streak, they still are in contention to win the NFC South, remarkably enough. So I think they're going to play their best ball here. I believe Derek Carr is going to try to play in this game. I'm seeing him listed as a starter, so that is a good standpoint on this one. All boxes checked for me. Give me New Orleans here, -5.5, 2.5 unit play.
Yeah, complete alignment for me. My first official, just jumping off it. You basically said everything that I'm going to say. So I'm just going to elaborate and just put a little more hyperbole on this. This team is a statistical buy in every single format. 0-3 straight up in ATS last 3. 2-8-2 ATS in the season. 0-4-1 ATS at home. It's actually pretty absurd to think that this team has not covered a home game yet. And we're sitting here on December 10th. And this is really a great calendar spot for them. This is the first time all year, I believe, they're playing. Yeah, it is. It's the first time all year they're playing consecutive home games. So they're going to get into a flow. It's classic environment. You come off a road trip. You're zigzagging your schedule. They're going to get into some sort of continuity point here. And Carolina is really in the polar opposite from a scheduling standpoint, comfortability. This is their third consecutive road game. They got beat up in Tennessee 2 weeks ago. We suggested Tennessee would probably get there that day. Last week, a tight cover, a hook cover in the division at Tampa Bay. Now, back-to-back divisional games, an angry New Orleans team, 3-game losing streak. Really all boxes checked in this spot. Love this play. Saints at -6. Anthony Latino opening the broadcast. Big game here, surprisingly, in Cleveland this afternoon between the Browns and the Jags. A lot of moving parts. Of course, going back 6 months, people would have said, Jake Browning, who's that? And, of course, Trevor Lawrence, questionable, I believe, will go today. You like the whole home team, however, at -1.5.
Yeah, maybe we get a little pharma special here, something you and I like to talk about in the NBA, the Circa. I don't know if we can still talk about Diddy special and the pharma special with some of these guys coming in and out of the lineup. I actually thought Jacksonville would be better off here if they didn't start him. Now, how that would have went for CJ Beathard, probably not great, but I don't love, Lawrence checking in here, on kind of a short spot, right? Banged up against a Cleveland defense that just has been absolutely lights out at home. Lights out at home. That's what we're going to get into here, and that's what we're capping again. Now, look, I was wrong. I probably misplayed the hand of what the Flacco experience and the Cleveland Browns defense would do last week, but I do like it here. Last week, again, away in Denver in a tough environment. This week, at home, and that's really where the big difference is. You get another week of repetition for Flacco. I don't think Lawrence is going to be right, despite what they're saying. I think he's rushing it back, and he, frankly, should be kind of resting, maybe trying to get right for this division race for them down the stretch. But when you look at this, probably going to be a defensive battle. 6th DVOA ranked defense for the Jags, number 2 overall for Cleveland. But like I said, Flacco now gets another week of reps. He didn't look terrible in Denver. That really wasn't the issue. The issue was the defense. But this defense at home, right? From an opponent points per game standpoint, they rank pretty high overall, 10th in the NFL, but 30.7 away, 10.2 points per game at home, right? So that's a 20-point swing there. You look at the yardage, very similar. They still rank number 1 overall the way this thing averages out, but they're giving up 345.3 yards away, 175.7. So if you give me a banged up Trevor Lawrence in the dog pound, in December football in Cleveland, this defense has to step up, and I do think Flacco and the offense will look better. So I actually love the way the line has dipped now. I have it at -1.5. You can play the money line again if you're more comfortable. Underneath that 3, 2.5, I'm pretty comfortable. So -1.5, -110. Let's ride that defense.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, I think the question mark here really is Trevor Lawrence. And, high ankle sprain, you're not really supposed to be playing the next week. So I don't think anybody has any idea how good this guy's going to be today. Apparently, he's never missed a game since high school. So I think he's probably banking on that. It's just kind of in his mind. He wants to get out there. But nonetheless, Cleveland -1.5 for the odds fellow. My next play, another collaboration play with the gun. Going to Baltimore. 1 o'clock, M&T Bank Stadium. Rams on the road on East Coast time. And we're taking the home team here at -7, posted early week. It is 7.5 now. We would not talk you off -7.5. I think this game has some margin attached to it. And really, this is just a great all-around spot, similar to the Saints spot. Baltimore comes in here off a pretty lackluster, I would say fortunate cover 2 weeks ago at the Chargers and a bye week to where they are 4-1 ATS at home. Even more specifically, 2-0 at home ATS against the NFC. And I was watching a couple shows earlier this week, and people were saying the NFC is just not accustomed to the scheme they run. They're not really formatted to pick up on their tendencies, and it really has played out with absolute emphasis twice. Week 7, 38-6 Ravens against Detroit, and Week 9, 37-3 against Seattle out of this same division coming across to East Coast time. Baltimore had over 500 yards in both of those games. Go to the Rams side of this game. You just want to sell the Rams situationally against these playoff caliber teams. We've detailed this week after week. We've probably bought the Rams more than the average person this season, and we've done it with success. But you have to understand the environment that they play well in. Divisional football and non-playoff teams. 2 wins against Seattle, 2 wins against Arizona, Indy, and Cleveland. Losses: San Francisco, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Dallas, Pittsburgh, Green Bay. Much higher level competition in those games. And the Rams are just statistically very, very hot. They're 3-0 straight up in ATS last 3. We've bought them 2 out of the 3 weeks. So we know when to buy. We know when to sell. And they are really, really cratering down in this position today. This game, I believe, will have some margin attached to it. And it is an official from myself and a collaboration with The Gun.
All right, yeah, let's get into this game here. And actually, Shark kind of turned me on to it. We've been talking about this game all week, and I was like, I got to get the right line on this one. I know it's sitting at -7.5, but listen, if you go like Caesars, for example, you can get -7 with a little bit of juice. I think you can get it -120, -125. And if you want to even take it further and you want an adjusted line at -6.5, you can get that at -135, 137 currently on books. So pay a little bit of juice. It'll get you past some key numbers on this one. But let's talk about this game here. You got Baltimore coming off a bye, back-to-back weeks. Cincinnati and the Chargers, almost said Clippers. 9-3 straight up and 8-4 ATS this season. I don't know why I'm talking NBA. I never talk NBA. We talk about the Rams are coming off a 3-game win streak, but look who they've beaten. They've beaten 2 divisional opponents in Arizona and Seattle, and then they beat a banged-up Cleveland team last week with a lot of injuries on that lineup. 6-6 straight up, 6-5-1 ATS this season. Now, when they have to play a step up in class, and I'm referring to the Rams in this spot, they're good against subpar competition, but when they have to play some bigger opponents, it's a different story. Look what they did against San Francisco. San Francisco was actually up 10 points until, some tomfoolery happened to ruin the spread. They lost that game 30-23 at home, plus 21 net yards, -2 turnover ratio. Then they had to go play Philly at home. Philly beat them 23-14 at home, -205 net yards for that game, -1 turnover ratio. Dominated in the yardage in that game. And then, of course, they had to go play at Dallas, and Dallas does what Dallas does at home. Beat them 43-20 on the road, -107 net yards in that game. So, like I said, step up in class, the team falters. Now, you got to look at the Rams. This is the 4th AFC opponent, AFC North opponent that they faced this season. They lost to Cincinnati 19-16. With an injured Joe Burrow, for that matter, -17 net yards. Then they lost to Pittsburgh 24-17. Then they beat Cleveland, like I said, 36-19. But that game was a lot closer than the score was given off in that game. Joe Flacco in his first start in God knows how long. So there was a lot of key injuries and a lot of moving parts in the roster for Cleveland to even finish that game. But when you look at the Rams' non-divisional opponents, -5 point differential, -38 net yard average. Baltimore versus non-divisional opponents this season, +15 point differential, +104 net yard average, +1 turnover ratio. Better numbers here from the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore Raven is also 4-2 ATS at home this season, 2-1 ATS versus the NFC. We talk about how good this team is versus the NFC. Detroit beat them at home 38-6. Absolute blowout, +166 net yards. Then Seattle 37-3, +364 net yards in that game. And of course, they played Atlanta on the road. That game did not cover that one, 31-24, but they were up 31-15 with 3 minutes left in the game. So there was a backdoor cover situation there for the Cardinals. Baltimore should have blown them out in that game as well, and it was on the road. So like I said, Baltimore just performs well versus non-conference opponents at home in Baltimore. It is raining. It's not cold. It's like 50, 60 degrees out there. It's not going to be windy. So I think this is going to be exceptional, especially for a Baltimore team that is running the ball a lot more lately, knowing that Mark Andrews is out of that game. I think this is the key spot here for Baltimore to win this one. That's why I made it a 3-unit play. Give me Baltimore here, -7, 3-unit special.
Yeah, and the odds fellow has something going on there, so he has exited the broadcast. It is the Shark and the Gun continuing along on a suddenly not so casual Sunday, December 10th. Right back to the Gun. Another official at 1 o'clock. Divisional football here, a rematch of a tight Falcons road win in Tampa Bay a few weeks ago. Gun going right back to the source. Atlanta again to beat Tampa Bay, this time on the money line at -135.
Yeah, Atlanta. I'm just gonna love this team. I think this team is the team to be in the NFC South, in my opinion. Look where these two teams are coming from. You got Tampa 5-7 straight up, 7-5 ATS, coming off that close loss I had a close win at home last week versus Carolina, 21-18. We did have them correctly on the plus with Carolina. Got the hook. That helped with that win. But we have to look at Atlanta coming off back-to-back wins, 6-6 straight up, 4-8 ATS this season. Ugly road win versus the new aforementioned New York Jets with Tim Boyle at quarterback. Won that game 13-8, minus 65 net yards, but they had a +3 turnover ratio in that game. Tampa, while we've talked about their road success ATS-wise, 5-1 ATS this season, they're 2-4 straight up in these spots with a -1 point differential, minus 82 net yard average. But when you look at Atlanta, they played their best ball at home, 4-2 straight up, 2-4 ATS, but they have a +2 point differential, plus 77 net yard average. These two teams did meet in week 7. Atlanta did win with a game-winning field goal, 16-13, and they won the net yardage battle in that game, plus 72 net yards. Atlanta was a 3-point dog on the road, and now you're seeing the line flip to the other side, a 6-point swing or a 5-point swing. It depends on what books you're getting the numbers at. And then you got to look at Atlanta versus divisional opponents. They play exceptionally well. 3-0 ATS this season, 7-2 ATS since 2022. Where you have Tampa 1-2 ATS versus divisional opponents this season, and on a 3-6 ATS streak versus divisional opponents dating back to 2022. Atlanta has lost 6 out of the last 8 matchups versus Tampa, but in 5 of those matchups, who's the quarterback for that team? A little guy we know as Tom Brady. Tom Brady ain't there anymore, but when he's not the quarterback, Atlanta is 5-1 straight up versus Tampa dating back to 2017. So I just think Atlanta's in a better spot. I think they're coming off a nice road win in New York, got back home in their comfort zone, where you have Tampa playing their 5th road game in the last 7 weeks with no rest. So this team is probably dragging ass going into this game versus divisional opponent. And you have the better divisional ATS winning team here with Atlanta. So I'm going to be taking it here. I'm going to take the spread out of the way. We're taking it at the money line. Give me Atlanta money line -135, 3-unit banger.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, this is definitely a Atlanta line, as you suggested, a 6-point gap. This is really speaking to what should be a 3 to 5 point victory on average,
right?
But I think the even more standout point here is the fact that Tampa Bay was running such a clean sheet on the road, ATS, for the first 5 or 6 games. They are coming down. The number is indicating it. I think you're on the right side of this game, although I'm not on this officially. I think Oddsfellow is in and out. We're going to just keep riding the wave.
There he is. You ready? Time, your show, dude. Let's go.
This might be it. This might be the final one before this connection goes completely destabilized. Let's ride.
So we'll segue to 4. We'll segue to 4 o'clock. Oddsfellow, second official of the broadcast, 4:05 in Vegas. You're taking the Pastronauts on the road and the Vikings at -3.
Yeah, I'm ready for the smoke and mirrors Las Vegas Raiders downward trend to continue here. I think that stadium is going to be packed with Minnesota Vikings fans. I love the fact that it's sitting at 3. And you do have both teams coming off a bye week. So it's not that the Raiders, I don't think, will be ready. But I love what the Minnesota Vikings defense does getting pressure. You have a very low-ranked Raiders offense. I need the Pastronaut to get back on track. I need the Minnesota Vikings to dial up that pressure, to get pressure on Aiden O'Connell. And I think that's what's going to make life difficult for him today. So I love it at 3. We'll kick it over to the gun before this connection goes wild, because I know it's a family play for us, and the gun's got even more. So let's ride the Vikings. You guys take care. Enjoy the rest of the show. Thanks, boys.
Yep. Guns picks. Alignment.
Yeah, full alignment on this one. Listen, when the stock is low on the Pastronaut, I'm ready to buy, and I think this is a perfect position for them. You have Houston you have both these teams actually coming off a bye this week, well rested. Different situations for both teams, though. You have Minnesota coming in this one off back-to-back losses, Denver and Chicago, 6-6 straight up, 7-4, 8-1 ATS this season. On the other side, Raiders, back-to-back losses as well. Got crushed by divisional opponent in Kansas City and Miami. Actually, non-divisional with Miami. 5-7 straight up, 6-6 ATS this season. But we need to look at the Raiders on this one. Considered a good home team, but when you based on that sample size, I had my suspicions, so I delved a little bit deeper on this one. They have a +3 point differential, +13 net yard average this season, 4-2 straight up, and ATS in that span. But they've done it versus some lackluster opponents at best. Pittsburgh, Green Bay, not the Green Bay you're seeing right now, a little bit hot Green Bay for that matter. New England, the Giants, the Jets, and then KC. Of course, KC getting crushed in that game. So not the strongest opponents at home. So take that with a little bit of grain of salt when you're looking at that ATS home record. Now, Minnesota has excelled on the road this season, actually played quite well, plus 4-point differential, plus 14 net yard average. And their defense has been really strong, especially getting to the quarterback. They have a 10.9% sack rate on the road this season. That's pretty impressive. Night and day compared to how they do at home. But when you look at Minnesota in the last 2 games, the turnovers have been the biggest issue. -2 and -3 turnover ratio in the last 2 games. They did that versus Denver, though. Denver is number 1 at takeaways this season. And then they did it versus Chicago, a decent takeaway team at 15th ranked in the NFL. But they're going against a Raiders team that is not as great at getting the turnovers. 22nd in the league at creating turnovers, the Raiders are this year. So this may be a better situation here for the Pastronaut in Dobbs. Also, look at Minnesota on the road. 8-3-2 ATS dating back to 2022. 4-0-1 ATS as a road favorite dating back to 2022. I think it's just a situational spot here. The nostalgia of having Pierce as the quarterback for the Raiders, I think that's kind of wearing off and the cookie's starting to crumble there. And then you have a Minnesota team just well-focused, off their bye, off back-to-back losses, and they're trying to, they're still fighting for a playoff spot here, and I think they're going to be able to get it done here versus this Raider team on the road. Give me Minnesota, -3, 2.5 unit play.
Going back to 1 o'clock, again, situational backup quarterbacks involved in this particular game. Guns, we're going back to you. Going to the road team here, Gardner Minshew and the boys on the road in Cincinnati. You are taking the Colts at +1.5 official.
I got to write. Here's the situation here. I think it's more of an overinflated value in John Browning. And then you have this Colts team that is just sneakily getting wins here and there. And I'm still going to be riding this team. I've been riding them like for the past 2 weeks on this one. Now look at Cincinnati. Short week for them, right? Monday Night Football, OT win. Winning that game 34-21 plus 115 net yards for that game. They're 6-6 straight up, 5-6-1 ATS for the year. When you look at the Indianapolis Colts, 4-game winning streak and off an OT win themselves versus Tennessee, 31-28, despite losing the net yardage battle in that game. Now we look at Cincinnati coming off a great win. They played a Jacksonville defense that's one of the worst in the passing game, though. Jake Browning had played really decent in that game. I think he had 80+% pass completion rate. He looked exceptional. But when he actually had to play a good defense, it was a different story. Remember, the week before that, they had to go play Pittsburgh. John Browning was a starter in that game. They only had 222 yards of total offense in that game, -199 net yard average in that game. Guess what? Pittsburgh always loses the net yardage battle in every single game. When you lose the net yardage battle to the Steelers, you did not play very well. The key to this game will be getting to John Browning, in my opinion. If you put pressure on him, I think he's going to be able to make mistakes and falter, take sacks, fumbles, what have you. And guess what Indianapolis has? A great pass rush. They have put up 42 sacks this season with a 10.2% sack rate. That's ranked 6th in the NFL. I think this is going to be key to this game because Cincinnati's line, Swiss cheese altogether. So when you look at Indianapolis, they perform well outside the Division II. They have a 5-2 ATS record, 4-3 straight up versus non-divisional opponents, and that is against some formidable teams here. We're talking about Baltimore, the Rams, Cleveland, New Orleans, at Carolina, New England, and Tampa. And they actually won a game on the road versus Baltimore, by the way. Look at Cincinnati has done well outside the division, granted, with their stats, 5-2 ATS, 5-2-1 ATS, 6-2 straight up. But the sample size is a little bit different. Most of those teams came from the NFC West. They had 2 situational spots versus Jacksonville and Buffalo. So I'm not taking that with a grain of salt, too. And granted, Joe Burrow was the quarterback in most of those spots. And then you got to look at Cincinnati. This is Cincinnati's 4th game versus the AFC South. They're 1-2 straight up in ATS in these spots. Losing to Tennessee 27-3, losing to Houston 30-27. Jacksonville was a high motivational win for them, and then of course they lost Trevor Lawrence, so that could have been a different situation altogether for Cincinnati. So I think it's just a perfect spot here for Indianapolis. I'm not sold on this Browning getting significant passing numbers in the past 2 games. I think he falters here versus a good defense, a good pass rush, by the way. And I think it is all Gardner, all Minshew, all day long. Give me the Cincinnati. Give me Indianapolis here plus 1.5 3-unit play.
Yeah, I think you're making good points there, particularly with the inside of the division versus outside of the division elements for Indianapolis. Want to give a shout to the chat. Eric Catherine, what's going on? Lex in the chat. Jabaka, Gerardo, Teams by Law, Justin McElvey, Nasty Nate. What's going on? Christopher Bolcher, Mitch Decker, Coach Jim 32. 59 people in here. If you're in here, drop your comments in the chat as we continue this upward momentum in this 2023 campaign. My next play, another collaboration play with the gun, going 4:25 p.m. SoFi Stadium, Inglewood, California, taking the Chargers at minus 2.5, 1 unit. Chargers are yet again within this conversation developing here a great statistical buy. This team is 5-6-1 ATS, could be far better. And I think very noteworthy, they cluster. I started to go through this last night. I was actually very interested by what I found. They started out 0-2, then they went 2-0, then they went 0-2 again, then they went 2-0, then they went 0-2-1. Now they're 1-0. So what you're looking at here is purely a pattern. They lose 2, they win 2, they lose 2, they win 2. And it's purely momentum, it's energy, it's them seeing themselves win. We say this, see the ball go through the hoop, you trust yourself more. And they are coming in here off one of the most ugly football games we have seen in recent history, a 6-0 cover. Somehow they got there on a -5 last weekend in New England. But we expect the upward momentum to continue for this team. And this is really a great situational fade of Denver. Denver, if we're being honest, was a little too hot. 5-0 straight up, weeks 7 through 12. Did lose last week, and I think that's a continued sell as they come down, continuing off of that 5-0 heater, if you want to call it that. Denver's also 0-1 ATS road in the division. They did not cover a primetime game in Kansas City in week 6. And I think statistically, within this matchup, you actually are buying low off the Chargers last year, going 0-2 ATS against Denver. Last year, it was October 17th, 2022. Denver did lose in overtime in SoFi Stadium. Key point, though, Denver did cover the spread. They lost 19-16 on a +4. Then they came back home. It was January 8th this year. It was the final week of the regular season. Chargers lost a game they didn't really need to win. And Denver was favored in that game -2.5. So they did cover the spread by a hook. Now this opens up at -3.5. That's a 6.5-point expected win today. And I think this is a very, very sharp look all around. Numbers and narratives and a collaboration with the gun.
Yeah, I got it at 2.5. I'm seeing the 3s starting to pop on the board. So get there now. I think you can still shop around, find that 2.5. That's a key number here because we know what the Chargers do. It's always 3-point spreads with them, so grab it while you can. But yeah, you said it here. You have Denver coming off a tough loss last week. Got it to the red zone, couldn't finish it off. Lost 22-17, and then the ugliest of ugliest games in Foxborough Stadium, 6-0 in that one. Kind of narrowly winning that game, but it was ugly altogether. But prior to that, we talked about Denver staying really hot on this one. Shark alluded to it. They won 5 straight prior to that loss versus Houston last week. In that stretch, they lost the yardage battle in 3 out of those 5 games, but they've been significantly dominating in turnover ratio. 4 out of the 5 games, they've dominated in the turnover ratio in those games. But when you look at the Chargers, they have that home with a +1 point differential, -45 net yard average. They've had to play some very tough competition at home, right? Talk about Miami for week 1, right off the get. Awesome electric offense. And they had to go play a divisional opponent in the Raiders. Then they had to play Dallas, Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore. So you're seeing they're playing some really high quality teams here at home. And then when you look at Denver versus divisional opponents, they're 2-7 straight up, 4-5 ATS versus divisional opponents dating back to 2022. -76 net yard average versus those opponents. And then, of course, Denver on the road. Not a backable team. They play better at home. Minus 12 point differential, minus 171 net yard average this season, minus 2-3 straight up, and 1-3-1 ATS in that run on the road. So, and then you can look at the situation between those two teams when they do meet. You have to be taking the home team. The home team is 5-0 straight up, 4-1 ATS in this matchup. This cap is specifically related to how Denver underperforms on the road. If you look at that 5-game stretch, I believe 4 of those games that on that win streak were at home, and they played some opponents that were missing some key opponents as well. Then you just have a Chargers team that's going to be coming in here ready for that back end stretch to go make a playoff push. I think this is a perfect spot to be jumping on the Charger train. Get it done here, Herbert, for the boys. Give me the Chargers here, minus 2.5, 3-unit play.
Yeah, staying at 4 o'clock here, 4:25. Big time stuff. I don't think either of us have an official on this game, but we do want to run through the games that we do not have officials on. And I think this is the most marquee by a mile, particularly in the 4 o'clock window here. Bills on the road at the Chiefs. And this line is getting steamed aggressively towards the Bills. We've been talking about the Bills week after week. This team is just a buy team, and I think the market is definitely sharp action coming in here off on Buffalo, off a bye week and an excruciating loss to the Eagles in week 12. But throwing it to the gun for some opening comments, and I will elaborate.
Yeah, you have them coming off that bye, off that just terrible loss. Had Davis wide open and just missed him on that play. That should have been a win for them. I consider that in my head. I was like, that really stuck with Josh Allen and really stuck with that team. I think they're going to come in here really high motivated. And usually in these spots, when they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, if you look at the matchup on this one, the Buffalo Bills have won the last 2 versus Kansas City. So they've actually performed, they actually matched up quite well versus them. Then you have a Kansas City team that I don't know who they are. They go into Sunday Night Football, they go play the Green Bay Packers, and they lose the game outright to them as 6-point favorites. Right now, I'm not in the buy now spot for Kansas City. I think they need to adjust a little bit. I think they're relying a little bit too heavy on the pass as of late. The receivers are just not clicking with Pat Mahomes. Travis Kelce's getting doubled. He's not himself as well. I think if they focus a little bit on the more on the run, they'd be in a better position. I mean, they're putting up 5.6 yards per carry in the last 3 weeks versus their opponents. I don't know if they're going to balance things out, but I think it's a buy spot here for Buffalo. I haven't taken it officially because it's down to 1.5 at this point. You're basically just trying to pick a winner. I need to see Buffalo win some games. They've lost 3 out of the last 4, but they played exceptionally close with their opponents left and right. So it could go either way on this one. Not an official play for me, but I do lean towards the Buffalo side.
Yeah, this is just a tough game. You know, I would have loved to get there with Buffalo, but the thing that's holding me back is the fact that, as you mentioned, Kansas City is coming off a really pathetic effort in an outright loss in Green Bay last week. So inherently, there's going to be a fire there. There's going to be passion on the Kansas City side of this game. And you get a revenge game. They did lose last year 24-20, as you mentioned. The Bills are, without question, a statistical buy. Team went 0-6 ATS for 6 consecutive weeks, middle of the season. They are 2-0 ATS since. So just as statistics flow, they will continue their upward movement. I just don't know if it comes this week, particularly as you mentioned on a really short, tight line here where they have to win the game outright in Arrowhead, which could be difficult. So I think there's just a counterpoint to both sides of this game. Wanted to take Buffalo, great statistical buy, but Kansas City off a loss, not what we're trying to deal with there. Also at 4 o'clock, Niners are playing the Seahawks, divisional football, NFC West. Didn't get there with this one, although I do lean towards the Niners. I think this number creeping up to minus 13.5 is getting into almost a push range now. Early week when this was 10.5, I think there was some exploitability on a 10.5, 11. 13.5, I do expect this game to fall somewhere right around 13 or 14 points. I think what you're looking at here strictly is the fact that the Seattle Seahawks at 6-6 are fool's gold. They're coming in here on a 3-game losing streak, but the crucial point here, their wins have been just absolutely unimpressive. Let's just go through it very briefly. They beat Andy Dalton, backup quarterback for the Panthers, at home in week 3. They beat a very lackluster Giants team on the road, Monday Night Football week 4. They did take care of the Cardinals, who are obviously very, very lackluster, and the Browns with a backup quarterback. And they beat Sam Howell and the Commanders 29-26 in a tight one at home, which ultimately was a showcase to their mediocrity. The Commanders are an incredibly mediocre football team. Their only impressive win of the year, in my opinion, at the Lions in week 2 in overtime, 37-31. If you look at the dispersion of the box score of that game, Lions could have won that game. The yardage was very, very even, and there was a pick 6, I believe, in the second half that did sway that towards the Seattle side of that game. But moral of the story, Seattle's fool's gold. Seattle's also coming off a road cover Thursday Night Football, going back about a week and a half at Dallas, 41-35 cover. So you stay on the road, you're off a huge cover, you gave a huge effort there, and you got to play the Niners, who hammered you 2 weeks ago on Thanksgiving night, 31-13. I don't think it gets any better here for Seattle. Again, the only reason I'm not on this is because I think the line has creeped up to push range, but this is definitely San Francisco or nothing for me. Guns, comments?
Yeah, I think the same thing. It's like it was 10 like 2 days ago. I don't think Geno Smith's going to be playing this game. That's what that line's telling me now. If it creeped up to 3 points, or 3.5 points for that matter, from the 10, I think that's an indication that you're probably not going to be looking at Drew Lock as a quarterback there. That is not a good spot, especially going against this 49er teams that is absolutely steamrolling their competition. Coming off the bye when they played Jacksonville, I would not be I would be only be betting this with the San Francisco side if you had to bet this one. But like you said, I think the line has escaped us altogether. This thing did open at like 4 or 5 or something like that, and then got pushed up. I mean, this is just a complete, utter, seems like slam where you got the 49ers are just going to beat the piss out of their divisional opponent like they have been. I think they're on a 7-1 ATS run versus divisional opponents. So, yeah, it's San Francisco or pass, but I'm not going to be playing it. Line is completely I missed the boat, so to speak.
Yeah, without question, without question. Going back to 1 o'clock, couple more games here, no officials, but conversation wins, and let's talk about it. Detroit Lions on the road at Chicago, 1 o'clock here, Soldier Field, inside of the division. This is just a tough spot to figure out for 2 reasons. I fear, and I don't like that word fear, but I do fear that we really have seen the best of Detroit ATS. And we've talked about this week after week. We backed them numerous times at the back end of last year and the beginning of this year. But when teams run off 90 to 95% cover streaks for 10 plus games, they just hit a statistical cap. And I think that's really what you've seen with Detroit the last couple of weeks. They just seem to have hit the wall. They're 9-1, they're 9-3 straight up, which is incredibly impressive. But game against the Bears at home in week 11, very, very lackluster, very, very loose with the ball. Turnovers have been rampant in the last few weeks. They did escape that game 31-26 in yet another giveaway, if you want to call it that, from Chicago. Just week after week, it seems like taking leads late into games and just blowing it in the fourth quarter. Somehow Chicago held on last week in what was a sharp dog take in primetime Thursday Night Football in the division at Minnesota. But I just think that this Detroit team is no longer in a statistical buy zone. I think they capped out about 4 weeks ago. Their last really impressive game, and it's hard to even call this really impressive, was a game against the Raiders. They covered at home 26-14. That's where it started to kind of go awry for them. They really started to get loose with the ball and unprofessional. So I think they probably do win this game, but I think this could be pretty tight. Guns, any comments on this one?
Yeah, I think you said it best. I think they've kind of capped out. And this is a short line, and it's showing you there's a story to this. It's a little bit scary to be like leaning towards the Bears in this spot, especially versus a divisional opponent, and how Detroit has been exceptionally well ATS versus divisional opponents. But this is telling me a Chicago story. Chicago's like 4-1-1 in their last like 6 games, ATS wise. And then they're getting healthier week to week. Of course, having Justin Fields back in there is been the key element to this one. And they're off a nice little win versus a divisional opponent there with Minnesota. I mean, I think this is a team that is actually turning the curve as far as going against divisional opponents and either getting wins or covering these spreads. And you may be seeing the pendulum swing from the Detroit being the fade spot, Chicago being the tail spot. But I'm not going to be jumping on this. I think 3 is a really tight line. It could go either way. I mean, I think Detroit did like kind of backdoor. Actually, they took a big lead last week, right? And let the Saints come back in that game. I wasn't officially on it, but I think that's what happened in that game. So yeah, you may be looking at a Chicago cover, if not win in this spot. Like I said, at Detroit, they played 31-26, losing that game, but they stayed with them the whole game and actually created 3 turnovers in that game. So yeah, Chicago should have won. So that is a chip on the shoulder spot, revenge type of situation. So yeah, I lean Bears, but I'm not playing it officially.
Yeah, and obviously since Justin Fields came back last week and got that ugly win on the road, he hasn't played at home in, I believe, a couple months. I think the last time he played at home was like week 4 or something. Obviously Tyson Bagent getting a home win against the Raiders and a home win against the Panthers, but
you look at that too. That I mean, they played last 5 games. Is 4 out of their last 5 games have been on the road. So coming back home, yeah, it's probably a better spot for them.
Right, and again, Justin Fields has not played a home football game since September, I believe. So
yeah, he's gonna be ready, fired up.
It'll be a huge spot here, divisional revenge game, and of course the line is short. So Bob the Candyman is saying take the Bears. Bob official, he's official on the broadcast.
Ka-chung, baby.
One final point on this. I didn't really go into detail on this, but it just caught my eye as I was looking at it now. This total at 43.5 is definitely very noteworthy on the under side. I think if you look at that game a couple weeks ago, 31-26, obviously, as we mentioned, it was a backdoor. There was a flurry of points late in the fourth quarter for Detroit to come back. But I think 43.5 is actually suggestive of an under today. And I think you're going to see the cold weather, December, Chicago, tight game here, probably somewhere in the range of like, I don't know, 23-20 or 21-18 or something like that. So I think we're going to expect a tighter game here, and we are not getting official with it. Last one in the 1 o'clock slate. Interesting game here. Houston on the road, -3. This was 6.5 early week until Zach Wilson agreed to come back and play, which is just the comedy of pro football that this is now they're having to beg Zach Wilson to play for them. But nonetheless, this game I think is taking on a bit of an intrigue and I think some ambiguity. Guns Picks, any comments on this one?
I mean, this is Houston's first road game in a while. They just come off a back-to-back home stretch, going 2-1 in that spot, losing a close one to Jacksonville. I think there was a potential doink type of situation, losing that game. Could have won that one as well. And they've won 4 out of the last 5, running real hot. This Jets team I can't figure out. I thought it was a perfect spot to be taken. I didn't take it officially, but I know some sharp people that did. They took the Jets with Tim Boyle as a quarterback versus Atlanta, knowing that Atlanta plays bad on the road and they couldn't get it done. And then you have to basically go, hey, Zach, we want to go back to you. And he goes, no, I'm good. I mean, you don't have the confidence to be the starter. I saw CJ Stroud go into the tent, and he was so scared to miss a play. He rushed out of the tent to get back on the field. That's a baller. That's a competitor. It's like, but you're telling me you're scared to play. You don't want to play. You just want to hang out and be Aaron Rodgers' buddy on the sidelines. I don't know where the motivation is on one side. However, with Houston, I just think they're running a little bit hot on this one, and that line tells me it probably is a Jets line as good as the Jets defense is. But I'm afraid you're going to get screwed somewhere with Zach Wilson throwing a bad pass, not looking confident. I hope hopefully they're doing a heavy run type of situation versus this Texans team, but I don't know what the situation is with the Jets. And of course, Houston kind of in a weird spot, not comfortable on the road, not playing there in almost a month. So yeah, I don't have any opinion on this one, but man, if you take the Jets, just hold. You may be throwing up at the end.
Yeah, I don't like the Jets in this spot. I mean, the team comes in here on a 5-game losing streak. Of course, Tim Boyle not playing, so that's theoretically an improvement. Zach Wilson has looked better. I will say that. I mean, before they put him on the bench, I mean, I think that's part of it too. It's not so much that he doesn't want to play. I think that he was just insulted. I think he took it. He just took it personally. And you know, you got to be a professional and play. But I could understand. You know, they did bench the guy for really a journeyman 27-year-old quarterback. So I get it. I wouldn't have done the same thing myself, but I do get it. And I think the game is just tough. As we've mentioned numerous times, the Texans are a bye team. They're well coached. CJ Stroud is a great leader, and the group has great camaraderie about them. So I think the shortness of the line is maybe not as short as we think because, again, if somebody had told us going back to the summertime that Houston with a rookie quarterback would be laying points on the road at the Jets, we would have said that's actually strong for them. So I would lean towards Houston here. I don't really see the Jets. I mean, obviously the Jets defense is excellent, but
I'm just not impressed with Houston on the road, especially outside the division. I mean, they lost to Atlanta 21-19. They lost to Carolina 15-13 on the road. They did beat Cincinnati 30-27. I guess that's a good win, but that's a motivational win. I don't know if this is a good road team yet. And this will be a good sample size because they have another road game inside the division versus Tennessee next week. So maybe another look, maybe better to look at that game than this one.
Yeah. And our guy 77 Figure says Saleh will be fired at the year end, unfortunately. And that's certainly possible. Of course, very, very results-oriented business. Not a lot of patience with these coaches. And it is unfortunate because if we're being just logical about it, it's hard to turn over a team in a year or two. You know, these guys need 3 or 4 years, and oftentimes they don't get that. And they get booted out the door before they really have a chance to let, the process, as people would call it, come to fruition. So it's just unfortunate, and it really is. 8:20 p.m., final game on tonight's card. 2 Monday Night Football games tomorrow night. We will be looking at those tomorrow afternoon and see if we have any officials on Monday, December 11th. But big-time stuff here, NBC Sports, 8:20 p.m. Divisional football, NFC East, Eagles at the Cowboys. A lot of stuff going on here. Guns, picks, comments.
Yeah, I'm not done with this cap yet. I need to think about it a little bit further. But we talked about it early in the week. We felt like this could be a field goal type of situation for one side or the other. And then you're sitting at this thing with Dallas at -3.5. You have Philadelphia basically going through this immaculate gauntlet. They had to go play Buffalo, losing that, actually winning that one in overtime. And then they got stomped in by the best team in the NFC, maybe even the NFL for that matter, in the 49ers. And now you got to go play your divisional opponent. This team typically, when they split every year almost, the home team is usually the take in these spots. So probably I lean towards the Dallas side just for that matter, especially with the revenge spot. I thought Dallas had many opportunities to win that game versus Philadelphia on the road, and they just couldn't get it done. I don't know if we're going to be looking at another weird Dallas type of situation where they falter. But you also have a motivated team with Philadelphia coming off that bad loss versus 49ers. Who knows what side to take on this one? I think it's going to be a tough game. I think it's going to be a battle. May have a play later, maybe just try to find a prop situation to go take. But I don't know if I'm going to get there on the side or the total.
Yeah, I think there's significant counterpoints here to either side. And it is unfortunate because I would have liked to take Dallas. I think the divisional revenge game holds a lot of weight. As you mentioned, they split last year. I believe they split almost every single year.
It's like every year. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you want to buy Dallas at home, particularly coming off a non-cover against Seattle. It was their worst home game of the year. Everything's really lining up for it, but this is just not the line you want. This line is really, really tight. And the way I look at it, I graded it to be right around 3.5. And it's just unfortunate. You want to take Dallas. We don't want to tell you guys to take the money line at like -155 or 160. Of course, in baseball, we wouldn't worry about that. In football, it's criminal almost, but it's the comedy of sports betting, how different sports take on different numerical capacity. But nonetheless, I do think Dallas gets there, but I think they get there tight. And, one thing that you mentioned every week with this this dynamic with San Francisco is that the teams that play San Francisco the following week do not perform well. And
correct.
It's not even so much that they got hammered 42-19. It's just the fact of the physicality of the game. It's just not a lot of recovery. So I think that we would probably never talk you guys onto the Eagles here. Dallas is definitely the look. I haven't gotten there yet. I do think it could be tight at the 3. So
I'd like to find a 3. 3.5 is just a weird number. If I could find a 3, I would feel a little bit comfortable with it. And maybe, like you said, why don't be afraid to pay a little bit of juice on some of these lines. I took an alt line on Baltimore and I got it -133. I'm like, what's the difference? I'm paying $20 or $25 extra to get past key numbers. I think that's important in these spots. So yeah, I think you should just wait. This is a game. The line's not going to go crazy before it kick off on this one. You can just wait, sit back, maybe analyze a little bit further, see what happens for the rest of the card. And maybe there is a spot where the line ticks down at one point with one book and you can grab the Dallas line that you want.
Yeah, for sure. Tight game, big game. Will be a great game to watch. And that's a wrap for this one. NFL Week 14, Sunday, December 10th, 2023. Circa Millions, the show. The Shark, the Gun, the Odds Fellow featured in the beginning of the broadcast right here live on Sharky Waters Nation, X, Twitter, and YouTube. 3 top plays for myself, taking the Saints at -6, Baltimore -7, early week 7.5 now. As Guns mentioned, if you buy a hook, it's around 135. And the Chargers at -2.5. The Gun, 6 top plays. Atlanta -135, Baltimore -7, New Orleans -5.5, Indianapolis +1.5 on the road, Minnesota -3 on the road, and a collaboration with the Chargers. The Odds Fellow, Cleveland -1.5, and Minnesota -3. Have a great Sunday. We'll be on here tomorrow morning. BetUS NBA TV show at noon with Sean Green and Junior Brown. It is the Shark. It is the Gun. Guns. Close out with some words, and let's dominate.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody in the chat. Justin McKeevy. I know we already did roll call, but I'm going to do it my damn self. Coach Jim, Mitch Decker, Chris, what do you call Bullshit? Yeah, Taylor Gang, Petros, all you bastards that have joined us in the chat and shared all your plays and all your analysis and all your opinions. We appreciate you all. And if you've just joined this channel, this is the first time you watch this show, make sure you jump on the Sharky Waters Nation channel and hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and always like this video. That helps us get into the algorithm and spread the love and the sharpest content on the planet. Listen, we swept the board yesterday and we weren't on the damn show. Both of us. And guess what? We're going to happen. We're going to continue this momentum all the way through the regular season. And of course, yes, college basketball content will be coming. I think I'm going to be starting it next Saturday. I think that's the perfect spot to do it. And I will be on doing the show. I haven't named the show. I may call it Breaking Ankles again. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But I'm going to be doing a show next week on Saturday. And of course, we're going to do the bowl season first leg of that this week as well. Got to figure out a time on that one because I have oblos on Friday. May have to do it Thursday, but we'll see. Good luck with your bets. Let's dominate the board as always. Let's kill it, baby. Let's keep dancing all through this week 14 slate. Bang!